Hi, and thanks for joining me. While I was peacefully sleeping, I learned that Meghan Markle made some quite strident allegations against other women at the South by Southwest event. What I mean by that is she hit out on women attacking other women. She said that the attacks against her were not only catty, but cruel. And she mentioned that she no longer goes on social media at the moment because, she doesn't want to deal with all of that. Well, we all know that social media has trolls, and any woman, and I presume any man, but I can't speak from their perspective, gets attacked. That puts their head above the parapet, as Diana and Fergie used to say. It's open season for trolls, basically. And that happens to anyone in the public eye. But she seemed to make more of a generalization. She seemed to be lumping any woman that happened to raise disagreement with all the allegations she's made against the royal family over the last 3 or 4 years, or her actions over the last 3 or 4 years. She seemed to lump all women in with those online trolls. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I wanted to also provide a counter narrative because she didn't provide any context for the attacks against her. So let's crack on. I've made some notes and I'll be really interested to see what you think in the comments down below. Now let's kick off with what she actually said. She was asked a question about trolling. So she was answering a question and she said, "I keep my distance from social media right now for my well-being, but the bulk of the bullying and abuse I was experiencing in social media and online was when I was pregnant with Archie and Lily and with a newborn with each of them," she said, after being asked about the trolling she faced. You just think about that and to wrap your head about why people would be so hateful. It's not catty, it's cruel. Why would you want to do that when you're pregnant or as a mum at such a tender and sacred time? Now, I'll address those claims in a minute, but it would have been a perfect moment to address the abuse directed at the Princess of Wales by her fan base, the Sussex Squad. It would have been a perfect time if she really cared about women's attacks against other women to actually call that out and to say that she does not stand by the revolting and vile attacks against Catherine, the Princess of Wales, while she's trying to recover from a serious operation. But she didn't. And one thing I noticed was she escaped any accountability for that by saying that she wasn't on social media at the moment. So, of course, she would have no idea. Convenient, isn't it? Anyway, we will crack on. So she questioned how anyone could do that to an expectant or new mother, noting that much of the vitriol she was seeing online was coming from women trying to take down other women. And she used the inflammatory term spewing. Now, that is designed to paint a picture, to raise the temperature, to deploy a reaction. And she certainly deployed a reaction from me, but I will try to keep it calm, unbiased, measured, and factual. So let's make sense of this. Woman to woman, Meghan. You were not even on my radar until the Oprah Winfrey interview. Occasionally I might raise an eyebrow at some of your antics as the wife of Prince Harry. And, that was it. But when the Oprah Winfrey interview came along, and I actually watched that, and then I read the transcript, because honestly, I couldn't believe it. And it was at that point, and a bit of the shenanigans that led up to Megxit, or their exit, if I'm not going to be misogynistic, Harry, I had a degree of reservation, but this was compounded by the Oprah Winfrey interview and then further compounded by Prince Harry's memoir Spare and, of course, the Harry and Meghan docudrama. And so upon that point, I felt compelled to stand up against what I saw as a campaign, a misinformation campaign, a smear campaign against the royal family, and really, in my opinion, blatant bullying. So, to go over things ad nauseum, I know is really difficult to listen to, but it provides context for why women across the Commonwealth started speaking out about the stories that Meghan Markle were spinning. Now, it was just unfortunate that in the Oprah Winfrey interview, she was clearly displaying that she was heavily pregnant with Lily. So if the attacks intensified post-Oprah Winfrey interview, it wasn't because you were pregnant with Lily, Meghan, or that you were presenting yourself as a pregnant woman, Meghan, but it was because of what you said, because of what you alleged, because of the damage you were doing to an elderly woman's legacy. Our late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, in her twilight years, dealing with her sick and ailing husband, who died only 3 weeks after the Oprah Winfrey interview, by the way, we saw it as an attack. And we saw it as an attack that needed defending with facts. Now, this baseless, targeted allegation of racism against the royal family was a really vague story. It was a really hard story to pin down, and the story shifted within the space of the actual interview. If you go back and watch it again, you will see I'm correct. When Prince Harry actually joined the interview, the story shifted. It was more or less debunked within the actual interview. So that indicates to me a story that doesn't have a lot of substance. But the horrendous effect of that story has lingered for years and years. It hovered over Her late Majesty's reign, threatening to undermine all her legacy and hard work, as I said. A woman, Meghan, who dedicated 70 years to duty and service. And you went after her. You shamed her. You chipped away at her legacy without a tear from your left eye. Now, it's worth mentioning, if we're going to talk about women and the proud legacy of women, it's extraordinary, really, what our late Majesty did. When she ascended to the throne, she ascended it in a world of men. She was surrounded by men in power, men that wanted to shape and control her narrative, who wanted to basically do what she was told. That's what she went into as a young woman, and she only had a very intimate family circle whom she could really trust. Now, later on in her reign, she did grow to trust her Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, very much and have a great deal of real affection for him. However, when she first ascended to the throne, she was a lonely figure who was doing her very best, very bravely, very staunchly, and not giving up. Plus, she was a young mother. And this new task, this new job that she took on required her to have to leave her very young children for enormous lengths of time. Enormous lengths of time. And she was criticised for that. She was an object of affection and great love, but she was also an object of ridicule and damning criticism. But all through her long 70 years of dedicated service, she just plodded on. She just got on with it, and she was always of the opinion that if you are sincere and do the work, that in the end, the work will speak for itself. That's a brave position, that's an honourable position, and it's a position that reeks of duty and devotion. And that is why so many women all over the world, Meghan, loved her. It sort of pales into insignificance, your 70-something days of actual working royalhood, doesn't it, Meghan? And I guess a lot of people objected to the fact that you spun that ridiculous story that when you were fleeing back to Canada, when you left Prince Harry to face the music at the Sandringham Summit, that an airline pilot or some sort of airline worker doffed his cap to you, knelt beside you, and thanked you for your dedicated service to the UK with gratitude. It made a mockery of real service. It made a mockery of Her Majesty's real legacy, of Princess Anne's real work, of even Catherine, the Princess of Wales' dedicated work, who'd put in probably a decade by that point, not 70-something days. But that, of course, wasn't mentioned during her latest Brave Victim performance. Her attacks on the women of the royal family and the women of the UK, and by extension the Commonwealth, were not referred to. No responsibility taken, no context given, no accountability. Now, who does that remind us of? The narrative was rewritten and shamefully allocated. All women that stood against what she represents were lumped into a group, a trolling little group of hatred. Apparently, you're not allowed to have a differing opinion to Meghan Markle. Apparently, you're not allowed to think that her attacks on the royal family, relentless attacks, which I will outline since the Oprah Winfrey interview, and to be honest, preceding it. Because what was that interview with Tom Bradby in South Africa about? Shaming the royal family. And in particular, shaming the women of the royal family. Because it was clearly stated that no one asked if she was okay. That was designed to shame and smear and make people resent the other women around Meghan at that time. It had a clear agenda. It had a clear narrative. And so that predated her exit from the UK. Then we've got the Cut interview, an example where she mentioned she'd found her diary in the sock drawer and mentioned she had a lot to say until she didn't. A clear, implied threat of delivering harming information against the royal family. And if I'm wrong, Meghan, I apologise, but you implied there was more to come after the Oprah Winfrey interview. Now, the Oprah Winfrey interview left the stench of racism over the royal family for years and years and years. And luckily it came to a head when your little minion, Omid Scobie, actually released his book Endgame. Because at that point, people had had enough. And so people openly mocked this narrative at that point. And I'm actually grateful to Piers Morgan for foiling the attempt to smear Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and also King Charles by just blatantly saying their names on his program. I'm glad he did. I don't agree with a lot of what Piers Morgan says. I don't agree with a lot of what he spins. But at that point, I thought, thank goodness, because you know the effect it's going to have. It's going to drag, it's going to shine the light on all the darkness. It's going to drag it out into the open for once and for all. And that narrative can't be held over their heads anymore. Prince Harry's book spared disparaging stories about Catherine and Camilla and other members of the royal family. Now, let's presume for the sake of argument that you had nothing to do with that book. Let's presume that, because that's the first attack that will come against me, that you had nothing to do with that book and it was your husband that wrote that memoir. Okay, but you would have been aware of the content of the book. And for the sake of argument, let's just say all the stories in that book that painted Catherine as cold, aloof, unwelcoming, unfeeling, were all to do with you. Post you joining the royal family. All of them were in some way connected with how you interacted with Catherine. And the narrative was clear that she didn't hug you back and William didn't hug you back and you're a hugger. Well, maybe they didn't hug you, Meghan, or want to hug you, or want to welcome you, or want to open up, or want to trust you, because they didn't trust you. Maybe they just thought you had an insincere agenda. Someone who intended to use their association with the royal family to achieve something. They've met so many people with an agenda over the years. And maybe they suspected you wished to achieve entry into the Hollywood A-list, something that you never achieved on your own. You never reached the dizzying heights that you lay claim to now prior to marrying Prince Harry. I've made some other notes. I firmly reject the shaming of other women who gallantly leapt to defend an elderly woman at the end of her reign, who leapt to defend Catherine, who quietly dedicated herself to learning her role and carrying it out with quiet dignity for many, many years, with very little credit often, or recognition, and a lot of criticism. So we know the truth. We hold our head high. The only person who attacked other women, Meghan, was you. And you had a larger platform. You had a greater platform than any little minor social media troll out there, Meghan. And you trolled the royal family. Now, I don't really want to make any more videos about Meghan Markle. I think I will focus on the positive work that women we can be proud of in the royal family are actually carrying out. And I will also say, on behalf of my community, I have no shame in any of the videos I have made. They have always been honest, fact-based, and as unbiased as I can make them. But I will sometimes post videos that are my own personal take and my own personal opinion and my own personal arguments. And that's what this video is all about. But I'm proud of my community. I know it is filled with women that don't wish ill towards anyone. And they just wish that this relentless attack on the royal family, this relentless undermining of all their activities and work via well-timed PR puff pieces that are just designed to garner attention to a meaningless car park walk instead of to a meaningful cause that the royal family are trying to support. We're sick of the narrative that you're trying to paint all the people of the UK as racist, sort of ignorant people. It is relentless. It just goes on and on and on. And then you had an opportunity to use the South by Southwest platform for positive highlighting, for lifting everybody up. You could have lifted up Camilla as a person who's standing up under difficult circumstances and working to replace her husband in a lot of events and activities. You could have lifted up the Prince and Princess of Wales and their family at a really difficult time. And you could have called for kindness and compassion. You could have done so much with this platform. But instead you just chose once more to attack, to undermine, and to shame, and to paint yet another false narrative. Let me know what you think down below, and I will be back tonight actually with a really interesting last episode of The Housekeeper's Diary. See you there. Bye.